Well, motherfucks. Just as I was gonna make another video, WWE, turns out they've released a lot of motherfucks. You know, a lot of people. Not counting the ones from last week, honestly, because a lot of those people were like, oh, WWE released like Kalisto, who gives a fuck, you know what I mean? Most of those guys are complete nobodies, right? But in this one, there are some names, I should say there's one name, where it is a little surprising, okay? So WWE, okay, I'm reading the article here just to make sure I get things right, and it says, WWE announced some shocking talent releases, headlined by Braun Strowman and Aleister Black. Pause, all right? Here's what's going to happen with Aleister Black. Let me tell you, as soon as I saw this guy, I remember I was hanging out at this place that I used to hang out with. This is before the pandemic. This was before Aleister Black debuted, right? And I'm talking to this guy who's a friend now, but back then he was just an acquaintance, someone that I knew. And he's like, did you hear? Aleister Black got signed by WWE. I'm like, yeah, I don't know who he is. I've never seen a match of his, you know? I don't watch like PWG or European wrestling, right? And then this guy was like, oh, he's like, so, and he went all smart on me. He's like, you've never seen a match with Tommy End? I guess Tommy End was Aleister Black's, what's it called? Like previous ring name, right? And I was like, no. And then he did this like dismissive head thing, like, oh, like you'll see, like when you see him, you'll see why he's good. And then like I went to YouTube and I looked at Tommy End, and you know, it's the same shit that Aleister Black does, right? Nothing really out of the ordinary, nothing really good. You know, this guy doesn't have a character. You know, he is set up as a wrestler that will fail. You know what I mean? Aleister Black was from day one set up as someone who will fail in WWE. This was evident to everyone who understands wrestling, right? Now, before we get to Aleister Black in a bit more detail, let's talk about a few of the other ones, right? Ruby Riott, same exact argument as Aleister Black. We'll get to that. Lana, I'm surprised she made it this long, but there's a reason why she got released. Buddy Murphy, same shit, motherfucks. Same shit as Aleister Black. And then Santana Garrett, I mean, if you put 10 broads in a row and you said, hater, which one of these is Santana Garrett, I would not know which one to tell you. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the last batch of superstars, we had people like Samoa Joe and, more importantly, Mickie James being released. Mickie James should have a job with this company for the rest of her life. But that's neither here nor there. Now, let's talk a little bit before we get to Braun Strowman about why everyone was released. Aleister Black, as we just said, and you can lump in Ruby Riott here, as well as Buddy Murphy. You have three people who have absolutely no gimmick, right? Like, I see other people going down this route. You know what I mean? And that's partially why these people got released, because they are so easily replaceable. You know what I mean? Like, for example, someone like Enzo Amore, in order for him to get released, he had to, like, be falsely accused of, like, rape and stuff like that, right? Because he is not easily replaceable. You know? You take Aleister Black, and then you take Karrion Kross, and you tell me what the difference between these two is. One says TikTok, the other one says things will fade to black. It's the same character. Nobody cares about this character. That's why I've been saying all these things about Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross has Aleister Black and Samoa Joe written all over him. I've been saying this for a year now. You see what I'm saying? When Karrion Kross goes to the main roster, he will have an Aleister Black-esque push. Then eventually no one will care anymore, because in the main roster, nobody cares about dark, mysterious, and tattoos. People want characters. They want charisma. They don't want just a guy who's out there. Now, granted, I will acquiesce. Obviously, Karrion Kross is better than Aleister Black. I mean, Aleister Black is atrocious. This is just a guy who has tattoos. And you know those guys that WWE has to tell you they're tough guys? Because you look at them and you're like, oh, like they look like shit, you know? Like CM Punk is one, Aleister Black is one. Like CM Punk, they introduce him. He does these fake-looking kicks, you know? And then like you hear like, whatever, let's say Corey Graves being like, CM Punk train MMA, he trains in Muay Thai. Yeah, but he sucks at it. He's like a beginner level, you know? Like, you have to explain to me why CM Punk needs to be believable. Because you put him in there with like Balls Mahoney, let's say, in ECW, and you're like, all right, Balls Mahoney should tear this little twerp apart in like 10 seconds. You know what I mean? So, but in order to explain why CM Punk is somehow winning the match, you know, why CM Punk is beating up Shannon Moore, who used to be like the smallest guy on the roster, but is like way more muscular than CM Punk. In order to explain to me why CM Punk is beating up Shannon Moore, you have to tell me that CM Punk is a tough guy, because otherwise I'll be like, oh, I expect the other guy to win, right? It's the same thing with Aleister Black. This is like a chubby guy with long hair, all right? That's another thing, long hair. Karrion Kross is one of the few people, which, I mean, I don't want to say Karrion Kross has a distinct haircut, but his haircut is distinct for what he is, because he's a guy who's like willingly bald, who shaves his head willingly. He's not like Braun Strowman or Baron Corbin, who have long hair and then they go bald and it's like, okay, now I gotta become bald. You know? He's not like that. He's a guy who's like a young guy. He looks young, right? And he shaves his head, you know, because it's badass, right? Aleister Black was more like a Baron Corbin. You know, this guy was a few years until he had to mysteriously lose a hair match or something and shave his dome piece. You know? Totally replaceable. Buddy Murphy is totally replaceable. Same thing as Aleister Black. Why do you need Buddy Murphy? You have 15 other Buddy Murphys waiting in line. You know, I was watching NXT last night, and it was Kushida versus some black guy. I forget his name because they skipped the match. I skipped around, right? But this black guy, considering it was like his first, as far as I can tell, his first TV match. Maybe he's been wrestling there for a while. I haven't watched NXT in a while, right? This guy was pretty decent, right? And he was pretty jacked. And it made me think, I'm like, oh, this guy could easily be the next Buddy Murphy. You know, it takes nothing to be Buddy Murphy. It takes absolutely zero. The smartest to be like, oh, Buddy Murphy's great on 205 Live. But Tony Nese could be Buddy Murphy. Why can't Tony Nese become the next Buddy Murphy? It takes nothing, right? Ruby Riott is just a female Aleister Black. You know, she's like what Rhea Ripley was supposed to be. I feel the same way about Ruby Riott as I do about Rhea Ripley. I don't understand why these broads are the way they are. Rhea Ripley comes out on Raw and she says, I am brutality. This is my brutality. Like, shut the fuck up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hope this girl gets released too. You know, maybe she can go to the indies. She's young as shit. Go to the indies and develop a character, you know? Rhea Ripley's garbage. She's terrible. I can't watch this girl. She's just the next one. It's just like Shayna Baszler came through, right? And then became a nobody. Shayna Baszler is going to be released eventually. So is Rhea Ripley. They're all on their way out. You know, Rhea Ripley, like, they might try to make her a Charlotte, but she'll never be a Charlotte. She will never be a Charlotte or a Becky Lynch. She might at most be like a Bayley, you know? And nobody needs another Bayley. So there you go. None of these people, Santana Garrett, I have nothing to say about that. I don't know who she is, motherfucks. You know, none of these people really, like, are people that deserve to be there. Now, a lot of them are going to end up in AEW. You know that Aleister Black and fucking Buddy Murphy are going to end up at AEW. And they will cut a promo saying how they were misused and not given a chance, right? The bad thing from WWE's perspective is that Aleister Black was essentially undefeated. You know, the fact that he was almost undefeated really does give some clout to him, right? He can now go to AEW and be like, yo, I haven't lost a match. I've lost like 3 matches in like 5 years or whatever, right? You know, he was a memorable NXT champion. You know, he had some pretty good matches. But it's not about the matches. I'm trying to explain to you motherfucks. You know, in NXT, it might be a little bit about the matches. In NXT, a good match can give you a career. That's why Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa never want to leave NXT, because they know that if they go to the main roster and a few months later, it'll be like WWE shockingly, you know, key word here, shockingly releases Gargano and Ciampa, who should already have been released. These are people that weren't even like meant to be hired. They're like, oh, we need 2 jobbers. And then they put on a good match and Triple H is like, let's give these guys a chance. In other words, let's throw some money away by paying Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, guys that will never ever headline WrestleMania, right? That should be the goal. Braun Strowman, however, is someone that not only could headline WrestleMania, but that arguably has headlined some WrestleManias. Not the main event necessarily, but he has been in marquee matches in the last 2 WrestleManias. You know, I don't understand why they released Braun Strowman. Now, I'm not advocating for Braun Strowman to become WWE champion. Of course not. But what I'm saying is, Braun Strowman is someone that you actually don't want to lose. You know, he's one of those people that you don't want to lose. He's like Mark Henry was back in the day, or like Big Show was back in the day, or even now, right? You don't want to lose Braun Strowman because Braun Strowman is arguably the strongest, toughest guy you have, right? Like, Braun Strowman is the guy, like, if everyone on the roster were to get into a fight, I have zero doubt that Braun Strowman would beat up everybody, including Lashley, including Lesnar, right? Because Braun is freakishly big and freakishly strong, right? But, so I don't understand why not have AJ Styles and Braun Strowman become a tag team and fire Omos, right? nothing is lost by firing Omos. I mean, obviously the reason is Braun Strowman gets paid way more than Omos, so you free up some budget, right? But Braun Strowman is someone that they should have kept at any cost because Braun Strowman is someone that you can always plug into a feud just because of his size. You can always it's like, oh, Shane McMahon's not doing anything. Let's have him wrestle Braun Strowman. Oh, there's no one to challenge Goldberg for the WWE title. Let's push Braun Strowman for a week and a half, right? Braun Strowman is good for that reason. Braun Strowman is the biggest loss out of these releases only because when Braun Strowman goes to AEW, it will be a big deal. It will be a big deal. Now, of course, he's going to lose to like Goldust or something at some point, but it will be a big deal because Braun Strowman is like a former champion. He's a former WWE champion, and he's a big motherfucker. And for what he is, he's not shit on the mic. He delivers his 3 or 4 lines pretty well. Aleister Black is going to go there to AEW, and he's going to say things are going to fade. He's going to be called like Alex Dark or something. They're going to be like, things will fade to dark. And he'll have some candle gimmick. Like, what the fuck was that all about? Oh, this guy's a vampire. Why? Why are these people retarded and pretend they're vampires? That's the problem with this shit, which I will talk about in my next 2 videos, which will also probably drop today, motherfucks. And with that being said, it sucks for all these guys that got released, but let's be real. No one really cares. You might care about Braun Strowman, but the smarts, as far as I'm concerned, hate Braun Strowman, and nobody gives a fuck about Aleister Black. Think about it. Nobody gives a fuck about this guy. He's been gone for a year and a half, and like no one cares, all right? So there you have it, motherfucks. However, the amount of releases that WWE's doing does open the door for AEW to sign a few good wrestlers. They can sign a few good ones. They can sign Aleister Black. They can sign like Andrade. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a few good wrestlers that they can sign now. So it is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see what these guys do. No one really cares. But there you have it, motherfuckers. There you have it. All right? Take care, bitches.